This one is the Temporary Accommodation PSEUDO DPS, being ran and managed by Hull City Council. So if your business can or wants to potentially provide temporary accommodation services, then this framework might be the one you need to consider. Not every tender is ideal for your business. Market engagement events help you to influence the council. Before we get into the framework or tender in more detail, I think it's important to actually identify or understand who or what business this is relevant for. For those who don't understand the provision of temporary accommodation first of all. Now, temporary accommodation is essentially a service where you're providing short-term housing solutions. The short-term meaning it could be weeks, months, in some cases even up to a couple of years, but it's short-term. Potentially, commonly for individuals, but it could also be for couples and families with children. Now, these individuals or groups of people will be at risk of being homeless or will be deemed to be at risk of being homeless or maybe already homeless and are eligible for getting support from the government. Now, what support would this be? This is going to be where the government are going to essentially need to provide them permanent housing. So in that time, whilst they're at risk of being homeless or homeless, the government needs to provide some form of housing for them. So this is where they need, I say some form, but essentially reliable housing solutions for them in the period where the government or the council are looking to provide them with permanent housing, either through a council-owned facility or potentially a social housing provider, whatever the case may be. But that borough has qualified them, assessed this individual, this family, this group, and said, yep, they need our support. But in the meantime, we need to work with private landlords or housing providers to house them in that period. So that's the provision of temporary accommodation. So like I said, if this is you, it's a service you think you can provide, then by all means, go ahead and actually start doing some research, your own due diligence to understand the other areas to be considered, because this video is going to be specifically focused on the temporary accommodation framework that's still open and is going to stay open until 2033. But if you can provide that service from what I've just described, then definitely go ahead and search temporary accommodation on BidSweep. The link is in the description because there are a lot more tenders and opportunities there similar to this one in other areas. But let's get into it. To explain this tender in a bit more detail, I'm going to need to go through the eligibility criteria, because the eligibility criteria will not only explain what this tender is about, it actually will also tell you what you need to be able to join or be a provider on this particular tender. To do that, we're going to access BidSweep and also go straight to the tender and then go on the eligibility criteria. Now, this criteria covers a range of different common foundational questions and areas we need to look at from the tender files, which you can also download on the portal. So that it will help us understand again if my business can deliver this, if my business should deliver this, and also if I can actually win the tender or be a provider on this tender. So we can see the service type, we've covered that already. The tender description, we've covered that already. So the description of this tender, so it's going to be staying open until 2033. And it's exactly what we said for the provision of temporary accommodation services for individuals and families. The age groups, not specified, but we do know single household, couples, and families. Now, let's get into the types of accommodation, because I think this is where it gets a lot more specific. Because if you have these types of accommodations, then you can potentially use them for this framework. Or if you don't, you know exactly what types of accommodations you need to go out to source or purchase. There are three categories, three different types of accommodations or units you can supply, which again is based on demand and the need from the council. Category 1 is the provision of short-term shared housing. So short-term accommodation, which is going to be fully furnished en-suite or shared bathrooms with communal kitchen facilities and space. Number 2, short-term family accommodation, fully furnished 1-bed plus bedroom properties. So over 1-bedroom properties. And lot number 3 is for the provision of hotel accommodation, used when other accommodations are unavailable. Then they'll go to hotel accommodation. So if you have hotels, you can potentially use it on this framework as well. Further information about the types of properties, again, because just providing the house alone doesn't cut it. So we actually understand how the house should be, what standards expected. Now, all must be good quality, clean, safe, well managed, fully furnished, including kitchen with cooking facilities, toilet and washing facilities, washing machine, beds, linens, towels, utilities, gas, electric, water, council tax, heating, natural light, ventilation, the list goes on. So this is essentially giving you a full breakdown of all your responsibilities for the property before the tenant moves in and whilst the tenant is there as well. In terms of the property location, this is also very specific because just because it's been run in Hull, you need to understand, even if you have that type of property or facility, where can it be or where should it be located? Properties will usually be within geographical boundaries of Hull City Council, so ideally in Hull, although those close to Hull may also be considered. Accommodation should ideally be within reasonable distance of a bus route or railway station or local amenity. So a very, very common way to judge what's reasonable or what will be considered is if it's within the local boundaries or the neighbouring boroughs within Hull City Council or around Hull City Council. But to save yourself the headache and stress, if you don't already have a property within those areas, get you one in Hull if you're looking to bid for this framework. Now, in terms of the rates, which means the rates and how much are the council actually going to pay you for your property and for the service, which is very important because a lot of the assumptions are typically made about rates, and also a lot of councils also have different rates which could affect your business if you simply bid on any tender just because it covers temporary accommodation in the title. So the rates are also a very important part of the files that we cover on BidSuite. By the way, if you generally find value in these videos, do subscribe, turn on your alerts, because I'm going to do a lot more of these type of videos covering more accommodation tenders and the criteria, so you know exactly what opportunities are coming up so you can bid for them and grow your business. Now, the rates here are fixed, okay, although they are due to or potentially will be reviewed every year according to the Consumer Price Index, so disclaimer there from the council. But they're fixed nightly rates, meaning what the rates are is single persons, so if you're housing a single person, for example HMO, is £35.50. For couples is £47.50, and family is £52.50 per night. Now, the rates are inclusive of all other charges as well. Hotel placements will be awarded on a nightly basis with preference to those closest to the self-contained accommodation rates. And if you house the individuals or the groups of people out of hours, which is between 8 AM and out of 8 AM and 8 PM, there is an enhancement of £50. So again, when working out your financials, your responsibilities and expenses you're going to be covering, understanding the rates should also help you decide if this is worth the investment or not. And of course, we covered the types of tenants here as well, because obviously you are going to be housing these tenants in your accommodation, so you need to understand the types and the groups as well. So this covers potentially, you'd be housing people with two or more needs affecting their physical, mental, social. So these individuals, they're at risk of being homeless or potentially homeless, so they might have factors that will disrupt or affect their health, which you need to consider as well. Then we cover what governing body registration is required. So do you need to be regulated or registered with any particular governing body to be provided here? Not necessarily. However, the DPS checks, the cost of DPS checks, because you do need to have DPS checks, will be, you'll be covering that. You must also generally understand that as a general standard, providers must also ensure accommodation meets the Housing Act 2004 standards. So a lot of the emphasis is on the standard of the property that you're going to be providing. We've covered the lots, meaning which lots can you bid for. So you can apply to join 1, 2, or 3, depending on your provision of the service that you want to deliver. Then we go into what previous experience is required. So to get on this particular framework, you need to fill out the standard selection questionnaire, which in that questionnaire, you will need to explain what other services, or if you have delivered other services similar to this, because this will also help in your bid to be a supplier. Now, of course, just because you can provide the accommodation, you have the houses, does mean that the council should trust you to provide this and support the individuals in question. Now, going into the previous experiences required. Just because you can provide the accommodation doesn't mean you don't have to have any particular experience prior to this. So especially if you're a new business owner, you need to understand and think about how you're going to demonstrate your knowledge, resources, and also experience. Because if you don't have experience, even as an individual, or you're not looking to work with partners or members of your management team doesn't have experience, then you may struggle. However, general rule of thumb, you should always be able to or be ready to explain and demonstrate in writing why they should trust you to deliver the services. In terms of what other services are required, we also cover this here again. So like I said, this is a very detailed list. So make sure you're subscribed and your alerts are turned on, and leave a comment if there's a particular area you'd like me to do a video on for temporary accommodation or any type of accommodation tender as well, so we can go through the criteria in more detail. But the long list of services here cover things such as, service accessibility, 365 days a year. You need to have processes for dealing with emergencies and serious incidents, because again, you are going to be responsible for the safety of these individuals you're going to be housing. Must have appropriate processes for recording and dealing with incidents and accidents, and you'll be taking full responsibility for the damage and repair of the work that may be done to your property as well. So these are all things you need to bear in mind within your financials, and you're generally, when you're applying for these sort of opportunities beyond just this one. Insurances, employees liability insurance covering 5 million and 10 million coverage for public liability insurance as well. Additionally, professional indemnity insurance with a minimum limit of 1 million. So these 3 insurances are very important and are compulsory for you to be a member of this framework. Now, the amount is also very important, because this catches people off a lot. Don't just have public liability for 5 million. Specifically, it needs to cover 10 million. I know typically 5 million is the baseline anyway, but for the rest, public liability also needs to cover 10 million. So make sure this doesn't catch you out. And then other financial documents needed as well. Hasn't been stated here, but generally speaking, if you've got accounts, if you've got your accounts, financial accounts for the past 1 year, 2 years, if you're a new business, financial forecasts will also help you. To summarize that part, go to the tender files. The tender files are also on BidSuite, which again, link is going to be in the description, so you can actually sign in if you have an account. If you don't, register and create an account, and then you can see all the details from the tender files itself, because there are a lot more things to actually consider, things that we haven't covered here. But from this video and from what we've covered, you should have at least an idea if your business should bid or not bid. And if you're going to bid, you understand what the criteria is in order for you to win the bid and actually join the framework. Again, hopefully you found value from these videos, because I am going to do a lot more videos like this. So please like and subscribe and turn your alerts on so you don't miss it, especially if you're a housing provider or you're looking at getting into the housing industry.